There's a lot of voices out there talking about prepping and stocking up, and it can be overwhelming. So we're going to talk about starting small and starting now. Hey y'all, how you doing? It's Josh and Nate with Heartway Farms. We want to say thank you for joining us. First of all, we're doing a Let's Talk About It here today. And go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot of content coming. It is springtime, so there are things going on.
There's so much going on. And finally, I don't think this week, but next week, we finally get some 70 degrees. Yeah. I don't know where you guys are from. We love hearing where you are from. So if you have not told us before, leave it in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from, where you're part of the family from. We love seeing it. And the kids love looking up on Google Maps where everybody lives, you know. And
the state and the city.
They really do. They just love it. And so,
or country.
Yeah, we're so happy you're here with us and a part of the family. But yes, next week we finally are hitting some 70-degree weather. And you know, the seed starts are coming up. Chicks are hatching. You guys can't hear them or see them, but right behind you, I have a bin full of chicks. So there's lots of stuff happening on the farm. We have our meat birds. We're actually getting chicks and going to start our own meat bird production. We'll do a whole video on that. Right. Anyway, I want to share that they come in at the end of the week, so lots of good stuff coming in.
So coming up. I think Annie's alluding to something right now that we can jump into is that we have a homestead. We have 6 kids. And we're busy. Yeah. And I like to say is I like to be productive and not busy. Right. And it can seem overwhelming with all of the stuff that's going on with prepping and stockpiling and food shortages and the disasters of life taking place right now.
I know, there's so many videos out there. There's all these conversations going on, and it's nice to be able to kind of come back to reality sometimes and talk about just real life stuff and real life perspective.
And to be fair though, we have talked about these things, but our heart's desire, even with people who come onto the property here with us, is that there's a sliver of peace, there's a sliver of hope, that there's some intentionality to doing these things in spite of everything that's going on. Yeah. Like this is something that we've been doing for years now. It's something that we've desired to do for many years. It's something that we've prepared to do from just study and research for a long time. So this isn't something new to us, but we do think that it's worth spending some time to just talk about how to get into some of just the simpler ways of doing life. Yeah. And that doesn't mean the easier way of doing life.
Yeah. No, it's not. It is, but it isn't. Right. And we're going to talk about that. And so today is a bit of a mashup of topics. We are talking about how to get started in a simple way with your Josh's favorite word is resilience, right? Mm-hmm. So how to become more resilient and the basic steps on how to kind of wrap your mind around it and not be overwhelmed. If you guys have been following us at all, that is like a theme of our videos. Please go back and watch our videos when we're talking about stocking up and prepper pantry stuff and all of this stuff, because really behind it all, you'll hear the heart of hopefully organization, peace, and changing your mindset kind of on how you look at things. So we're going to talk about that, but we also want to talk about kind of this idea of simplifying and taking things back to the basics, old-fashioned ways, the way that, you know, our grandparents and great-grandparents used to do things.
Well, and they were resilient ways. They didn't have power, and they were able to keep food.
I know.
And they didn't have refrigeration, and they still got to eat.
Yeah.
So like as much as we joke about it, there was a resiliency to the way that they lived. They didn't. These things are very convenient for us. Yeah. But they also have a sustainability in the way that they're doing these things.
But the modern things that we have working for us can also be some of the biggest hindrances too, in my opinion. Yeah. And I think there's a balance to it. So going back to a more simple way of life, turning off the noise. I know we're encouraging you guys to watch our videos, and we appreciate that. But at the same time, turn off the excess noise from the garbage out in the world, and putting down the phones and putting down the computers. We understand there's times and places for all of those things, but bringing it under control and turning those things off and just going outside, with your family, your husband, your wife, your kids.
Yeah. And I think using those things for the right purposes too. Like, I've talked about this many times, is there's a difference between being busy and being productive. And I will probably say this multiple times in this conversation, is that you can be busy with many things, but you can be very unproductive, or you can be a little more focused, a little more organized, and become productive in these things. I just had a conversation with a good friend of ours until later into the evening last night, and it kind of goes into what we were saying, is like, well, I don't want to look back 6 years from now and say, I wish I would have started 6 years ago. Like, what can I do to start now where I'm at? With 1/8 of an acre, with 1/4 of an acre, with 1 acre. We have 14 acres, and then
with an apartment, like we'll get to this.
But we also look at we would like to have more land at some point in time. So even the person who's got 1 acre is always looking at the person with 5 acres, and so on and so forth.
Right, but it doesn't have to be that way. I think it's always good to set goals, and our vision for Heartway Farms goes beyond just our little family. We're hoping to create something generational, but also something that is valuable in the community. We're looking to be something that, we've talked about not just being a consumer, but being something that can give back and provide for the community.
Right.
And that's what we want to do. So that's why it depends what your vision is for your family or for your business, if you're starting a homestead business or whatever. So, that's why you have to put that all in perspective. But it all can be very overwhelming.
Right.
So we're going to talk about first how to kind of start simple, but start now.
Right.
And don't just say, well, what if? And don't get consumed by watching YouTube videos on, doomsday. We have to I've shared this before, and if you haven't seen it, go check out the videos, but that the best way that I can kind of overcome doubts and questions and fears and concerns is putting it on paper, coming up with a plan, and executing that plan.
Right.
So when we're talking about starting simply, let's just bring it back to the basics.
Sure.
Number one, let's talk about starting a garden. Okay, there is skill involved in gardening. Yeah. And this is a skill.
But it just took water and seeds in the ground and everything grows great.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah. The weeds grow great.
The weeds grow great. So
Mm-hmm.
gardening is hard. And actually, I would say for me personally, Julianne has, my eldest daughter, Julianne, who you will see doing so much work around here. She has she's bent that way.
Right.
But it's funny because we can work together well, because she would be take a handful of all the seeds and just let them grow. She doesn't care about organization really in this sense. And she likes order, but anyway. So it's funny because you can work together. But Julianne is a wonderful asset to have around here, and she's definitely has giftings in the area of gardening, and she's just consuming knowledge all the time from these different books and stuff like that, and different channels that she likes to watch. But I do better with the animals. I would prefer, and I don't know why, and it's good, I guess, that we all have different things, but so that is not my bend. So I have to work really hard when it comes to having a successful garden.
Right.
But what we're talking about is starting simple.
Right.
And so we get so many questions about this. Like, what do I do if I live in an apartment? What do I do if I don't have a lot of land?
Yeah.
And you just start with what you have. So you can grow
microgreens in apartments,
Yeah, absolutely. You can do microgreens. You can have a small, if you have not seen our video about our kitchen garden, what's the square footage on that?
It's 5 by 10.
Okay, so 2 squares, where you can live in a neighborhood.
It'd be rectangles, but that's okay.
Rectangle. Our previous house, and this was, we lived in a neighborhood. It was an oversized lot, but Josh took ownership of that lot and turned everything. I was only allowed to plant edible things. That's what Josh's rule was. I have since kind of twisted him a little bit, that I'm like, okay, rose bushes are edible. Anyway, so But at our other
We
house,
were trying to maximize our space
we
there.
had kind of given up on the idea of being able to find land. Isn't that how it is,
Right.
And so we're like, okay, we're going to start where we are. Grow where you're planted, right? As a person. And so we started growing, and we had peach trees and blueberry rows and raspberry rows and a good garden, all the things.
Container garden.
Container gardens, grapes that were going over the trellises, and everything did amazing. And it was just, it was really encouraging.
And then we had like 21 chickens then, I think so.
Yeah, we started with chickens too, so we'll get to that in a second too. So just kind of think outside of the box. You don't have to go from living in an apartment to living on 14 acres.
Yeah.
You can start where you are and start learning those skills now.
For sure.
And build upon those. So like Josh said, discover things that will grow well in your small space or that will grow right outside your door. Make it easy as you can. Gardening is hard enough that you just need to simplify it. So pick a small space and look into high density planting or square foot gardening. I know it's called different things.
Yeah.
And just be successful at that. And
start small.
this is my biggest piece of advice, and I don't remember who I read it from, but it was a long time ago. So we plant lots of different varieties of things because we also offer some of our plants for sale. But if you are just starting, pick one variety of tomatoes that you know you like.
Right.
Pick one variety of cucumbers that you know you like. Pick one variety. And it's great, actually, if you go on to, I believe it's... I know Baker's Creek and Johnny Seeds. One of these books or websites, I can't remember, tells you exactly what is like the easiest to grow. Like
easy to grow.
Get that variety. Like don't worry, don't be suckered in by all the pretty pictures on websites and beautiful Instagram photos. Just be practical. Just when you're starting out, just be practical and start with the simple things. Pick one variety of the things that, and I mean, you can grow a lot of that if you want, like what cans well. We'll grow those tomatoes,
I think the idea though is just get the ball rolling and get going with something. And don't get overwhelmed by doing a lot of them. Everything. Just start small. Start today and start small is the idea behind that, right?
Yes. And so we talked about gardening. So next we'll talk about livestock, but I'm just including that in.
Sure.
Let's say you're buying a homestead tomorrow.
Right.
Don't get a dairy cow tomorrow.
Yeah, no.
Don't do it.
Bad idea.
Go to your homestead and
be on it for a year.
Yeah, be on it for some time if you can, and observe what's going on. And if you can't, if you aren't in that place in your life where you can have property, but you can have 6 chickens, have 6 chickens. They really are amazing. And then, so that's where I'm saying to start small, is to start with chickens.
So we had 2 houses that we did our major growing and gardening and homesteading like preparatory phase in, right?
In neighborhoods.
Yeah. So all of them. We started off with, and as much as we loved them or hated them, is we did meat rabbits in like a 12 by 12 shed.
Yep.
It wasn't ideal, but we learned processes. We learned the animal husbandry of the rabbits, and that was actually before we had chickens. So we had at one of our houses prior to, we had moved a few times, and then we had a garden that was decent there. Actually, that was probably one of your best tomato years.
That was.
And then we had these rabbits, and we had this like 12 by 12 shed. It was a horseshoe setup that we walked into, and we had some rabbits in some cages in there. So we learned about having rabbits and processing our own rabbits and the benefits that they could provide us. So we started small, but we started where we were at. That was like 1/8 of an acre. It was small.
Yeah.
And so we did our gardening,
house too.
And we started off with livestock, right? So we had rabbits, and then we moved again onto this other property that we kind of thought was going to be more of a longer term housing situation.
Yep.
And we had kind of just made a declaration that we were going to start where we're at.
Yep.
And we were going to make it happen there. And we got some chickens.
Yes.
So we've had some gardening experience, and we had some livestock experience, but we'd never been farmers. We had never lived on a farm.
We get this question all the time.
Yeah.
Actually, everyone who, I mean, a lot of people who come onto the property ask if we grew up homesteading or in the farming world, which actually around here where we are, if you're a farmer, usually it's
row cropping.
corn. Yeah, it's corn and soybeans, or it's beef steer.
It'd be cattle for meat production.
Yeah. So there are, that's what is around here.
Right.
I mean, we're not really in a lot of, there's little CSAs and different little things anyway, but that's the main stuff. So no, we did not grow up with any knowledge in this whatsoever. No. And so, I mean, we were kind of starting from scratch. Yeah. I think.
I grew up in the third largest city in Illinois, so I mean,
I grew up in the third smallest city in Illinois. No, I don't know if that's true.
But the point of it, we didn't grow up. I grew up in a city. Yeah. Like, we didn't grow up in the country per se.
Yeah. So but there's so many. This is where technology does come in handy. Is you can on YouTube you can find out the best variety of tomatoes to grow, or you can find out gardening 101, and people there's so many amazing people that are willing to get on and just share how to do these skills and start from scratch and teach you how to do that. So it's wonderful because it's not even like you have to know people personally anymore to learn these skills. I mean, it helps, Josh's grandpa's like a pro gardener, so it's helped to ask him
gardening.
To ask him questions over the years. But we just started where we were and we were content with that. And of course, when you're not looking, that's when the property comes along, and then sometime we'll have to give you guys a full history of just the whole story of it all, but that's not what today's about. But
so real quick, give us ideas of what you've started with, if you started something this year.
Yes, what have you started small this year, even if you're in an apartment?
And I want to know how many people are watching that literally have started something for the first time this year, or maybe even last year. Like, so you're brand new at doing this. What have you started, and how is it going for you? Give us a little feedback on that. These are interesting things to me, because we all started somewhere.
Yeah. And so, we talked about gardening, we talked about livestock, and really chickens are the way to start.
They're the gateway drug.
In my mind. Yeah. Isn't that true? Kind of like chicken math. Yeah. You start with 6 and then suddenly you have 500. Yeah. So that happens. So, but there's just something about it, because even if you've never gotten an incubator and hatched out eggs, try it. Yeah. See what it's like. Learn the tips and the tricks. Learn what incubators work and which ones aren't working that great. Right. Learn, these are things that are, I feel like they're things we take for granted because we just let everyone else do all the work. Right. And then, but the reward, it's kind of like homeschooling your kids. I'll share this. I don't know who all homeschools out there, but there's something about when there's a heavy weight that you carry as a homeschool parent, but at the same time, as you see the progress, even if it's a little progress here and there, I'm almost graduating. Julianne is almost going to graduate, and Marie's right behind her. Right. And it's suddenly like the greatest reward also, because you're like we did that, successfully, and it's going well. It's kind of, it's the same exact thing with livestock or with gardening or homesteading or whatever. Yeah. When you see the reward of the chicks are hatching and we have a bin full of chicks, or we're eating dinner out of our garden tonight, fill in the blank. It suddenly feels very rewarding and wonderful. So just begin. If you absolutely cannot have livestock, this is where you start making those connections. Yes. Start meeting people that are around you. I've actually seen comments from you guys where you are making that effort, and I think that is amazing. Find the people. Find your people. If you can't do it yourself, because of health or location, find your people. Right. And
there might be people in your area that maybe you're not their best friend every day, but you're at least, you see what they're doing and how. We have so many people that stop by here and they've never seen a chicken tractor or rotational grazing, but they're getting ideas from coming out and seeing different animals that are moving around the property. And today I just had a gentleman stop here and he's like, man, I'm on a farm with all these animals and it doesn't smell like a farm. I'm like, well, it's because we rotationally graze and they're not in their own manure all this time. So it's amazing at all the little things that we now take for granted because we just are doing it.
Every once in a while it smells. Let's just keep it real.
It does, because
animals
are still
winter
animals.
Time and spring in Illinois. But
as a general process, though, we have a lot of carbon with the wood chips, and the manure doesn't smell super strong.
Yeah, definitely.
So the point of it is people are coming on site and they're experiencing a farm in a different aspect than they would have before, because they're making the effort to meet their people,
Yeah.
right? And we happen to be their people sometimes.
Yeah,
So,
and that's okay. And
right.
I'm happy to be their people.
Yeah.
And I know if we don't offer something here,
You've got people.
I've got people that I can call and
Right.
say, hey, go call this person because they have raw milk now.
We refer people out to other people all the
I
time.
have no issue with that whatsoever.
We're all about connecting people to people.
She stopped. Yeah, we are. So just like I have to find my people, you guys have to do that too. And I'm happy to be your people. So they're full circle. I don't know if anyone followed that, but we'll just go with it. Okay, we've talked about gardening. We've talked about livestock, even if it's starting small or finding your people.
Yes.
And we're going to talk thirdly about kind of bringing back old fashioned. Okay, so old fashioned tends to have a negative connotation. I think that's a compliment.
Right.
Like, I'm cool with old fashioned.
Right.
I am totally
I'm all
fine
about
with
resiliency.
I know. In all seriousness, we're talking about bringing back the ways, that have been lost.
Right.
So many skills have just been completely lost.
Right.
And we've shared about this in the past, but talking about it again today because it's so important.
Right.
If you have no idea what you're doing, if you get put through a little bit of fire, then you're going to crumble and you're going to really struggle through that. But if you
Right.
begin when it's not crazy and it's not, things aren't hectic, and you begin learning some skills. And I'm talking about simple, basic things like just learning how to cook at home, maybe.
Right.
And learning how to take, if you are starting that little garden, how do you use that and turn it into meals for your family or in, canned goods or frozen things that you can put in your stockpile for the winter.
But then there's like you said, there's canning, there's dehydrating, there's just general like you said, cooking from those
Right.
the raw products that you have. So it's the old-fashioned ways, the water glassing thing that we
Yeah.
did.
Yes.
How to preserve food in different ways that we've kind of just totally forgotten about
Right.
because there's been no quote-unquote need for it. Well, all of a sudden when you go without power because of a storm,
Yeah.
not because of any doomsday scenario, but just because of the way the life is, right?
Yeah.
So it's very interesting there are some things that we've kind of gotten back into or that we've dove into that I didn't know existed, that
Yeah.
you could do certain things like with that, using mineral oil on eggs to seal them off and preserve them. I
Yeah.
hadn't really known about that until we started doing some research on that.
Great, and we had a customer actually come and tell us that's what he was doing, and it was just
Yes.
interesting. So
Yeah.
you learn talking to people too, and and I just love hearing the stories of, like, my grandma talks about going out and her mom would send her out to the chickens, and she would go grab a chicken, wring the neck, and take it in for dinner.
Yeah.
And it's just I know that's also a little tough for some people, but
Right.
that is real life, and it's good to know it's good for kids to know where food comes from.
Yeah.
It's good to know some of these skills, getting your hands on maybe some old books, or sitting down with if your grandparents are still alive,
Yeah.
and asking them questions. I know it's one of my favorite things when Josh's grandpa's 94,
Yeah.
and talking to him about the Great Depression
Yeah.
and what life was like, and it's pretty sobering.
So yeah, Grandpa's 94 years old, and he talks about how in Aurora they had carts, horse-drawn carts that have blocks of ice on them for the ice box, for the refrigeration system. So within the last 100 years, so many of these things of the old ways have just gone. Like, we're using root cellars, all these different things, and like I said, some of them are. It's kind of an oxymoron. It doesn't seem like a simpler way of doing things because there's a lot of work involved with it.
You might be working harder,
Right.
but it goes back to what I was just talking about with homeschooling, right?
Right. There's a reward.
There's a reward, and the quality, and we're to the point in our nation and in the world where you can't even trust labels,
Right.
and you don't really know. I mean, you have to dig and dig and dig to find out if these companies are really telling you the truth or they're just trying to scam you and claiming these things. I mean, even just the terms cage-free eggs. Like, have you ever looked into that? Like, it's not real.
Right.
You know, pasture-raised stuff. They just can put these labels on stuff and work the system, and these animals have terrible lives. So it's just, it's a shame,
Right.
but it happens. So to be able to know where your food is coming from, to be able to understand what to do with it,
Right.
when you have it, you know, it's
what do
just,
I do with this? Yeah.
what do I do with this now?
Right.
And some of these, going back to Grandpa, this is could be a whole separate video or talking point, but like hearing what he had to say about living during the Depression, it really, truly, I said it once, but it's sobering.
Yeah.
And I mean, they had to trade their radio for food.
For a basket of food.
They had, I don't remember who he said came to the door, but
it was just the people who passed out they got their food issued to them. They didn't get to go and pick their food like they do nowadays.
No.
And I'm thankful for the avenues that we have to take care of people.
Yeah.
But it is interesting when you look at it from a whole different perspective.
Yeah.
So the ways of the old-fashioned ways of doing things, there's a lot of work involved with it, but there's a lot of reward is what the point is.
So last but not least, let's talk about changing your mindset. I think a lot of people move on to a homestead or a property. I know we're talking to two different types of people. Some people apartments, some people homesteads, some people neighborhoods. That's okay. This pertains to all of you.
Right.
But let's say you're moving onto a homestead and you get all the stuff. You get the chickens, you get the ducks, you get the sheep or the cows, the dairy cows are over there.
Right.
But nothing from your previous life changes.
Right.
You still have this activity to go to and that activity to go to, and
here we go. We're really busy again.
We're
but
so
are we
busy.
productive?
We're so busy, and now we added a whole nother full-time job on top of being busy. And something that we have worked on really hard over the last 10 years, I would say, specifically, is saying no to busy and saying yes to productive.
Right.
And that was hard for us at first. At first, you're kind of undoing all of those extracurricular activities, whether it's, think of it. If I have 6 kids and they're all doing extracurricular activities, you guys can put in whatever you want.
Right.
We will never be home. We will never see each other. We will never have a family meal around the table, which we have pretty much every night, except for very random occasions.
Right. And even then, we're probably doing something together.
Together,
that we're just not here.
yeah.
Right.
I was just talking to Levi, our editor, this morning, and saying how strange it was, to send off the big girls to go work because they were playing Heartway harp and strings. Right. And it's because we have the blessing and the huge opportunity to be such a family unit where we spend time together.
Right.
And I think with all of these things, when you're considering resiliency, or being resilient, which again, Josh is just thrilled that I keep on using his word.
One more time.
Resiliency. He's so resilient. That it's having a strong family unit where you are not stretched like from here to here, never seeing each other, never working together, never communicating with each other, and feeling that pull and that tug.
Right.
It's going to destroy all of the things that you are trying to.
Right. I was just talking today I'm interrupting you totally.
At least it's you and not me.
I was just talking, but you just struck a chord because I was just talking with this gentleman that came onto the property today, and he was just like, "Oh, this is so great. Your kids are so, this," and he was praising the kids, and I appreciate that. But the point of it is that there's a lot of intentionality that's gone into that, and with all that we're talking about is the changing of our mindset. It took time. And it's not for everybody. We're not saying that our way is the right way. But the point of it is that if you don't make choices and you don't say no to some things, everything will break. So you have to make decisions on what's important, where you're going to kind of put those thought processes and those things down, and how you're going to move forward with them. I think that's the point of the whole conversation with this is that you have to make those decisions.
And whether it's where you're putting your energy and your effort into in this gardening world, in the stocking up world, in the prepping world, in your family, these all work together, and we can't ignore one thing and, just assume it's going to be okay.
Right.
It all works together.
Right.
And so like, even if, let's say your kids aren't at home, you and your spouse have to, work on these things together, not just be busy going all different ways, or so busy that, when we had to lay down the dairy cows for a while.
Sure.
When I say lay down, I had to sell them for a little while because my kids needed me for school. Like I had 6 kids suddenly, everybody needed me, and it was...
Well, we didn't suddenly have 6 kids. It did happen over a course of years.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, honey.
Yes.
Well, they were young, and then they all got to school. They all grew up. And so they all needed me. The big kids don't really need me, but it was the 3 little ones all at once.
There's definitely an intense time
needed me.
of teaching them all the basics.
But I could have either... And I did it for a little while. And that's why we can share these things, is because we have walked through them. We are not perfect.
We've made lots of mistakes. Absolutely.
But I don't even call them mistakes. It's just learning. Yeah. It's just
every mistake is a learning opportunity, right?
It's just learning. So I pushed through for a while where I was up and at it, getting the milking done, getting everything done, handling milk customers, still trying to handle school. And you feel like you're performing at about 60% on everything, not at your best.
Right.
Is that a fair way to put it? And at some point...
You're stretched too thin.
Right. And you're pushing yourself and you're not enjoying it anymore, which it's still hard work, but it's different when it's intentional and when it's in order and when there's peace and everyone's doing it together as a unit. Actually, it's one of my favorite things, and my kids would probably laugh at me, but it's one of my favorite things is when all of us go outside and tackle a project together. And
actually enjoy it.
And it's not even enjoy it. It can be hard. It can be hard work, but something about when all 8 of us are out there, because even Jesse and Tabitha, everybody gets involved and helps. And not only that, but they're learning they don't know it yet. The little ones, the big ones do. But the little ones don't even know the skills that they're learning.
Oh, yeah.
And they're just learning it.
Jesse was just out back today helping me do fencing. And he's like, Dad, I want to go and I'm getting cold now. I'm like, well, you have to just a little bit longer here. Because I actually needed the little guy's hands. I mean, but he was actually helping.
But what value, for him to feel and know that he is valuable to Daddy, and that his even if he's 7, he can,
he can stand on the other side of the creek and pull the wire like I need him to.
Yeah, he can have confidence in that. He's got purpose in that.
And once again, I keep referring to this, but I had a long conversation with the guy who showed up at the property today, and he's actually been kind of following us for the last 5 years since we've moved on here. And the point of it is he brought up a very personal thing. He had a falling out with his daughter, and he said, don't ever have that happen with your kids. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, you can nail homeschooling, you can nail, homesteading, extracurricular sports, whatever it is, you can nail that.
Yeah, you might be the best
basketball player. But if you lose
player.
your family in the process, you've wasted all that time. I mean, it's literally for naught. And I don't want to sound preachy, but that's where the saying no comes into play. Is we've made decisions. They're not perfect, but they're the decisions that we've made. Yeah. And by the Lord's grace, they've turned out to where thus far the children are enjoying what they're doing. They're taking pride and ownership in it. And there's a measure of excellence that they're being trained in. And it just makes you focus on the things that are important.
Also, something that I feel like is very important, because I've had this conversation with, beloved friends in my life, is remember where you are in your stage of life. And this goes back to everything about this should be simple. There shouldn't be any anxious toil. We've talked about this. That's scriptural, you know.
There's no anxious toil.
But you're going to have hard work. There's a difference. But I want to say, I have kids that are 17 and down to 7. I don't have, there was a season of my life where I had, 4 young kids, all young. And I
start very small where you are there.
But all I could do was a garden, and even Josh did most of those, really. Because I was watching babies. I was taking care of babies. We were homeschooling. That was my phase of life. So if you're watching this and you're feeling that kind of that I want to do it. I want to get started. I want to do all the things.
Take a breath.
Take a breath. And I can relate, because when you're in the world of all day, every day, all night, every night, little kids,
Right.
you want something to do.
Right.
You want something different than that. And I understand, but if you can take a breath, like Josh said, reevaluate kind of how do I do it simply? How do I start simple? How do I teach my kids with a small little garden? And we have success with that small little garden instead of making a 50 by 50 huge garden and struggle to keep up with it.
And I'm going to take on this real
steps.
quick though, because a mom can't say this, is value your role, value the time that you're putting into that child or your family, because so much there's a part of you, which is, I acknowledge it, there's a part of you that wants to do more, but the best that you're doing at that time is that investment into our families. And once again, we'll hit this in multiple times throughout our talks with you guys, you have to value your family first, because that's what's going to be there when all of these different things are either really successful or a big failure. Is your family being there in that together. So don't devalue your current role, your current place, and what's currently going on. And don't always, I wish I had, or I wish I did. But just start small. And that's the biggest thing.
What you can do is you can, if you feel that itch to get a garden going and start putting away food for your family, just learn how to be productive with a small thing and make it big. I mean, I love watching the videos of the people who take their neighborhood yards, like their front yards, and totally get rid of all the grass and turn it into a beautiful garden. I feel like that's how we should all roll, because it was so practical. And
they're growing so much in a smaller space.
Exactly. And it's just using, it's being countercultural, which I'm also very, very pro because our culture accepts about any garbage that's out there, and to stand out and to be different than that and just say, no, I think I'm content being, doing these other things.
Different.
Being a little different. So having your garden and having your chickens and, not saying yes to everything and losing that precious family time. So I know we covered a lot of stuff in this today, and we just appreciate you all so much, and just for us to be able to sit down and share our hearts and our thoughts with you and work on this together. We are always learning new things and trying new things trying to implement them here on our homestead, and we know you guys are too. And all of us are in this together. We all know that we want the best, right? The best for our family, for our kids, for our parents and our grandparents, all these things. We're all in this together, and we have the same goals and the same dreams. So it's just wonderful to be able to talk with you guys and share with you today what's on our hearts and minds. So we hope you have a blessed day, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
Bye.